Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tel Aviv. Today, we're proud to talk about the important environmental advancements that we've accomplished here and that have applicability to the world. Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much for joining. We appreciate your interest in this topic, and we are proud to present it. My name is Jay Shofet. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm originally from upstate New York. I've been in Israel for 30 years, and for the last 8 years, I've worked for the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, which is Israel's oldest, largest, leading environmental NGO. You'll hear a little bit about us later, but what we'd like to do now is tackle some of the important environmental issues facing Israel and the world today, and how Israel is approaching them. In a nutshell, we're going to talk about how a tiny country at the crossroads of 3 continents, a land bridge between 3 continents really, provides a model of nature protection that can enlighten the entire world. So welcome to the Anthropocene age. The world is facing an environmental crisis that knows no national borders and at the moment knows no limits to the crisis that is befalling us. It's twin crises, really. It's a climate change crisis and a crisis of biodiversity loss. I called it the Anthropocene age. That is what many scientists are currently calling the epoch that they believe we've entered, the geological epoch. They call the Anthropocene, which means anthro from human. It's the age in which man has actually, for the first time, humans, Homo sapiens, has changed the global climate picture. Not yet the geology so much, but that's coming as well. And really what it means is that since the Industrial Revolution, roughly dated the late 19th century, but increasingly throughout the 20th century, our pollutants and carbon gases that we put in the air have so drastically warmed the globe. And Thomas Friedman coins the term global weirding, not just global warming. It's true that the globe is getting warmer all over the place in at different rates, with all kinds of dire consequences we're already seeing, such as the melting of the polar caps and the rising of the seas. But it's also, the issue is not just this global warming, it's global weirding. Weather events are becoming more extreme. We're seeing rainier winters, we're seeing rainfall coming down in torrents that it didn't used to. We're seeing higher velocity winds and hurricanes. We're seeing extreme drought and extreme wildfires all over the Western United States. All of this is unprecedented. Only the Flat Earth Society and others deny that this climate change is happening and that man has a role in it, and that we need to curb our carbon emissions, and we need to emit as little carbon as possible and figure out how to store in the ground the carbon that we do emit. And but I'll just say for a moment that the other side of this horrendous crisis I mentioned is biodiversity loss. We're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction event in global history, but this is the event that we're causing. This climate change has both a big factor in the biodiversity loss, but as is rampant and unsustainable development. These two parts of the same coin, climate change and biodiversity loss, are locked in a positive feedback loop where a crisis in one accelerates a crisis in another. And one thing that'll be the background of what we're going to talk about today is this: the global biodiversity hotspots on Earth. This is about 3% of the land of the globe that the UN has declared very crucial for biodiversity, places where the biodiversity richness per square kilometer is much, much higher than the global average. And you can see in the middle of the green circle in the middle of the map that Israel, that land bridge between 3 continents, is right in the middle of that, of the globe and of the biodiversity hotspots as well. And as we'll see, as a land bridge, it becomes a very important restover stop for the world's 2nd most important migration fly route for migrating birds. And what I really want to talk about, though, is how Israel is dense and developed. And it is very diverse in terms of its climatic zones and habitats. That makes Israel a microcosm of and a laboratory for the environmental challenges that many countries are facing right now. And as you'll see with our innovative and scientific approach to environmental challenges, we feel that we have what to share with the world as well. So Israel is a very small country and very densely packed, second most densely populated country of the OECD, the developed countries of the world. It's even more dense when you realize that 60% of Israel in the Negev holds only about 6% of the population, and that crowds the other 94% into 40% of Israel's land area. So it is a very dense and developed and diverse country. It has a varied climatic zones. If you've ever been to Israel, you know that you can be swimming in a tropical sea in a lot in the morning. If you drive all day, you can reach snow on the 6 hours, 7 hours. You can reach, that's not even all day in American driving terms, but 7, 8 hours tops. You're on Mount Hermon, snow capped for several months a year. And the snow gets lower than that as well. But so we have alpine climates, and we have Mediterranean climates and subtropical climates, and of course, desert and semi-arid climates, and a climate of the Mediterranean steppe, the Batha it's called, which is really a big chunk of the land of Israel. So it's not just that we have these climatic zones that many countries do, and we have incredible biodiversity, as I mentioned before. The reason we have such incredible biodiversity in Israel is because as that land bridge between three continents, we have really the southernmost flora and fauna of Europe, the westernmost flora and fauna of Asia, and the northernmost flora and fauna of Africa. That puts us in a very, very rich biodiversity country. And in this, we're a microcosm of many countries. Of course, we also have rural areas and open spaces. We actually have close to 20% of the country of Israel is designated as nature reserves, which is very high. But a lot of that is in the desert, which is great. But we still have many more climatic zones and habitats to protect, and more in the desert as well. One of our most important jobs. So, you know, you've heard a lot about Israel's high-tech sector, its startup nation. It's a well-earned moniker. Israel has not just per capita, but objectively more startups on Wall Street than any foreign country in the world outside of the United States. We've been doing this for 20 years, and we have a very dynamic high-tech startup sector. You've heard about, of course, all our work in defense industries and in security, cybersecurity now, everything to do with big data and big pharma, biomedical innovations, fintech. Israel has been known for a series of incredible innovations in all kinds of fields, electronics and optics. But we're going to talk about a couple of the ones that are involved in environmental tech, because that you don't hear about as much. But Israel has some incredible environmental innovations that have spurred a environmental tech sector in solar energy and water management, in mobile transportation. I'm not going to talk about it today, but two of my favorite apps, Waze to direct your cars and move it, about public transportation, both Israeli developed and now globally in place, helping move people much more environmentally and with less carbon emission than they would without these apps. But going to focus on three specific areas of environmental technology that has been, that has been changing the world, and certainly a model and a beacon for the world. The first one, and it makes me so proud to talk about it as an Israeli, is what a smart water grid we have. We don't have a smart electrical grid yet, and that's why Israel's been stymied a little bit in our own solar energy, our own quest for photovoltaic solar energy. But that's turning the corner now. But historically, we've led the world in water tech. What do I mean by that? First of all, we recycle about almost 90% of the wastewater we use at home. That's an incredible percentage. The next highest country in the world, Spain, recycles about a third of it. So almost all the water going down our drains is recycled and reused for agriculture. purified enough to be used for agricultural use. And that has kept our farming sector more or less wet. Israel's had recently 7 rainy seasons in a row. And so water levels are high. But what's happening now with the Israel water system is incredible. You all know, or maybe you've heard about the national water carrier, Israel's innovation in the 1950s to bring fresh water through pipelines from the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, our only freshwater source, down to the thirsty households in Tel Aviv in the center of the country. And that was a lifeline for Israel for decades. But this year, by the end of the year, we're going to reverse the flow of water in the national water carrier and dump fresh water made from desalination plants on Israel's Mediterranean coast back into the Kinneret. At least that's the government's plan. We have a more ambitious plan at SB&I. We want to take that water just 30 kilometers north of the Kinneret, dump it in to the area north of the Hula Valley, have it flow through the Hula wetlands, the Hula Valley, the rivers that flow into the Kinneret, the Jordan ultimately, and then the same water will get to the Kinneret after nature and humans have enjoyed it as it flowed through the upper Galilee. So we'll see, but either way, it's a big boon for nature and for the Kinneret, and really unprecedented in the world to have a water carrier carry desalinated water to a natural pond to fill it up and to eventually allow water to flow out of the Kinneret towards the Jordan, the southern part of the Jordan River, towards the Dead Sea. That ultimately is going to be what's going to save the Dead Sea, and we're working on that. So Mikorot knows how to move water around really well, desalinates. We desalinate a higher percentage of water than any country in the world. We no longer have a water problem. It used to be just 10 years ago, there were messages on TV, Israel's drying up. We don't have a drop to waste. We still don't have any water to waste. We're still a semi-arid country, but we have invested heavily in desalination plants. Yes, we're monitoring them. By the way, feel free to write questions in the question and answer or chat, or even just say hello to us, ask us anything. My colleague, Jessica Lewis, is also on board with us tonight. She's the marketing director of Nature Israel, our American affiliate, ASP&I. Jessica will join us as I finish and for some questions and answers, and is here to answer in the chat if you have any questions. Yeah, so Mikorot has been, Mikorot means sources. It's the Israel National Water Company, and they and a bunch of water technology companies in Israel have really managing our water well, invested heavily in desalination, I was saying, and we're monitoring it very well. I know people in California are very confused about how and why Israel does it so heavily in the Mediterranean. We're also building one plant in Jordan that will be run on solar power for Jordanian water supplies. We monitor the effects, the effluent. We haven't seen any negative effects of the desalination in the Mediterranean where we're doing it. But we are going to be moving that water around. Very exciting. Of course, we invented drip irrigation. That was the Netafim company at Kibbutz Revavim in the Negev. Netafim was founded in the 60s when a kibbutznik noticed that there was a irrigation pipe running from pumping station to the fields, and in the middle of a barren grass field, there was this lush vegetation growing. And we finally stopped to notice it. Turned out that there was a tiny pinprick hole in the pipe. There was a tiny drip that they didn't even notice the drip, but they noticed the vegetation growing after a season. And the guy had a eureka moment about drip irrigation, and basically changed the world, Netafim did, by allowing small-scale farmers everywhere to save enormous amounts of money on water on what is ultimately a very simple concept and simple to implement. Not as simple enough, Netafim is working on the next generation. It turns out all this plastic tubing is not good for the environment, and also for the smallest, the subsistence farmers in the poorest countries in the world, it still is a little bit out of reach. So they're working on next gen drip irrigation. I'm sure it's going to be amazing. Finally, of course, I mentioned photovitalic power. Israel was late to the game and still is only producing 14% of its energy from the sun, even though parts of Israel have 350 days of sun a year, like this part of Israel. We're looking at a picture of Kituraz, the first field in Israel, I was there for the opening in 2011, I believe, when Yossi Abramowitz, a friend of mine, a solar pioneer, pushed the government to regulate the whole industry and create the industry. And now the solar fields are blossoming in Israel. But we are of two minds about taking up so much valuable land for solar fields. We believe, first of all, we should blanket the rooftops with solar, and we will get to that in a minute as well. But Energia Global and other Israeli tech firms are not. I mean, China produces the panels, but all the technology around the panels, making them more efficient and able to function in better, in hotter conditions, and self-cleaning units and ways to keep them maintained much more efficiently. Israel's inventing all this stuff. Arava Power and Energia Global, they're called globally, is using this to power Africa. And now they increased, for example, one solar field increased Rwanda's entire electrical output by 8% overnight. And they're having more successes all over a lot of Israeli technology. This is just an example. We're having successes, of course, not just being applied in Israel, but being applied throughout the world. So let's get to a little bit about what we do. And through that, by that, we'll look into it'll be a lens to look at the rest of the environmental picture of Israel. SPNI, Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, HaChavra LaHaganat HaTeva, in Hebrew. As I said, it was one of Israel's largest and one of our oldest NGOs altogether, founded in 1953. Then a bunch of kibbutzniks and scientists and farmers saw the draining of the Hula Valley by the government of Israel and by the Jewish National Fund as an ill-advised draining of a crucial wetland habitat. And they protested, and they were right. Eventually, in the early 90s, the Hula was partially reflooded, validating SPNI's founding story. By then, SPNI had become, as we are today, a very broad institution working to educate people about nature in schools and for informal education, fostering the love of nature through hiking and staying in nature in our field schools, and especially through nature protection itself and the various ways that we do that. Most importantly, we're rooted in science. We apply field science and research, and we contribute to field science and research in all the fields that we work in the deserts and in the forests and in the Mediterranean scrubland, in the beach habitats. We practice citizen science. We involve school children, the elderly, retirees, volunteers everywhere in our environmental monitoring, in environmental surveys, of the urban environment, bird counts during migration season. We do advocacy. We have lobbyists in the Knesset. We sit on all the planning boards in Israel, what you might call zoning boards. By a law that we passed, the public has statutory right to participate in the planning process, and we represent the NGOs in that process. Have a team of planners, land use planners, urban planners, regional planners, which are really the heart, in my opinion, the heart of what we do. To paraphrase Bill Clinton's slogan when he ran for president in '92, it's about planning stupid. So much of the environment and how to protect the environment comes down to what we do on the land, how we create ecological corridors, save our open spaces, and allow nature to flourish. One of the important things we do is advancing urban nature. Urban nature this is not a good picture of urban nature. This is a good picture of a river flowing through a beautiful wetlands area in northern Israel, and a river that is, whose banks have been adapted by man to be comfortable to get into. But it does show how nature has to be accessible to settlements, to human settlement. Nature is not something just out there that you have to drive hours to get to, and then you can enjoy it after unpacking your car and putting on all your gear. Nature is something in your backyard. We've learned that biodiversity flourishes even in postage stamp sized backyards, in small city parks, important biodiversity. And it's certainly being in nature, the Japanese call it a forest bath. But being in nature is just great for everybody's health and well-being. We saw that so vividly during the COVID lockdowns. When you have to be stuck inside, you want to be outside, and we saw how much nature can flourish when there is a little bit of a slowdown out there. So urban nature is one of our most important units, and you can visit our urban nature sites in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. We're working on surveys all around the country. Mayors are delighted to participate. The environmental ministry is helping us fund a lot of this. The Petach Tikva mayor discovered caracals and hyenas in his city, and mayors are discovering all kinds of mammals and wildlife they didn't even know was there. Wildlife that is not damaging to humans, but things that can be wildlife that can be enjoyed. Of course, I mentioned the fly route. I mean, basically, we support 500 million birds each direction on the world's most important or second most important migration fly route. Most of the birding population that migrates from most of the Eurasian continent, all of Western and Central, all of Eastern and Central Europe and Western Asia, they funnel down over this land bridge. They don't like to migrate over water, over this land bridge that is Israel. And we, according to international charter, and also because it's the right thing to do, we need to provide these birds with proper rest and relaxation and nourishment sites. And those were historically our wetlands, and those wetlands have dried up. 95% of Israel's historical wetlands from pre-Zionism are no longer around. They have been dried up, dammed up, built over, and in many, many cases in Israel become fish ponds, which was a very large branch of the Israeli economy and the Israeli agriculture for many, many years, but it's been declining in recent years as it's not as profitable. Which turns out fish farming is not very healthy for the fish or the environment either. And so many kibbutzim are looking at what to do with their fish ponds. We are suggesting and beginning to rewild these ponds into wetland nature reserves. We're finding generous support from donors abroad and from Israeli organizations and public sector bodies to reform these fish ponds, these industrial places, into wetland nature reserves, and the birds are coming back. We've done this at 2 kibbutzim, at Kfar Rupin and Magan Michael already. We're seeing the results, and we're hoping to keep these new wetlands in functioning and healthy habitats in perpetuity. They also act as great places to sequester carbon in healthy habitats. It's not just forests that help reduce carbon in the atmosphere. A healthy wetland habitat can absorb as much carbon as a healthy forest. So that's a very important part of what we do. And this is what I was talking about. If we're talking about the bird migration itself is to protect the birds. And to do that, I mean, we are creating these wetland habitats. This is a close-up of the pond at Kfar Rupin. This was an industrial fish pond with wires and drain, what do you call them? Things that fan up the water. I'm losing my English here. For years, since the 1930s. And when it failed to become a profitable fish farm about 10 years ago, they tried to grow wheat on it. That didn't work. And it had been lying barren and dry for several years before we reflooded it about a year ago. And the birds came back immediately. Within 3 weeks of reflooding, we saw 85 species of birds, a huge number, and more birds, mammals, reptiles are coming back all the time. We call this project Startup Nature. It's one of the most important environmental projects in the Middle East right now, and the first real rewilding project that Israel's ever had. We can't just restore this habitat because there's nothing to restore. We really needed to rewild this habitat and other habitats as well. We work cooperatively with our neighbors in the Middle East to advance environmental solutions. We wish we did this more. We strive to do it. We used to do it more, but it's a tough environment for political reasons, and the normalization process with the Palestinians has stalled, even in most environmental endeavors. But still, we have, for example, a barn owl project. This is a Jordanian farmer, and there's the Jordanian farmers, Palestinian farmers, and Israeli farmers, thousands and thousands of them now use barn owls as biological pest control instead of chemical pest control for the rodents that eat the crops. Barn owls are great predators in that way, and we've been working on that project for over 15 years. We also work in terms of the Mediterranean with our countries all around the Mediterranean basin to keep the Mediterranean Sea free of litter, pollution, ghost gear from fishing. Wow, I see we're almost, our half hour is almost up here. So yeah, we're working cooperatively with neighbors as much as possible. As I mentioned before, we see solar power on rooftops as one of the most important things Israel can do right now. We want to make them as ubiquitous as water heaters, as hot water heaters are. That was Israel's innovation on solar heating in the 70s, yes, in the 60s even. But photovitalic and efficient panels in Israel, a place where there's so much sun, is really, it's really, really necessary right now. So this is pretty much what we wanted to talk about tonight. I hope you enjoyed it very much. I'll just throw out here that, you know, there are certain things you can do to help us, to take action. You can sign up for our newsletter, attend a webinar. We have them every 2 weeks, usually on Sundays at 1 in the afternoon Eastern time. Of course, you can support us. And I think that Jessica will be putting up in the chat I believe there's a donation link in the chat. Yes, Jessica just put it up. So you can support us if you have the means or inclination. If you have the means or inclination to do any of these things, we'd be happy to be the beneficiary of your support and your interest. Happy to engage with you with anything at all. And I also want you to know that Israel's open. Israel's open. You can visit us, see the nature in Israel. I know people that have been to, I talk up in the States, I hear people have been to Israel many, many times and they didn't know about the bird migration. If you're in the Hula Valley or in one of our wetland habitats in either March or November, you can see incredible, spectacular migration scenes at dawn, at dusk, when 40,000 pelicans, the entire pelican population of Europe, lands at once and takes off at once the next morning. Get out there early or stay out at dusk, and promise you incredible sights wherever you go in Israel in terms of nature. And in terms of supporting us, there are benefits to supporting us at different levels, including, and this is most of all, and to guided tours of Israel, behind the scenes tours of our nature sites. Of course, we run 2 trips a year, organized trips of a week, November 6th to 11th this year, and next March as well, following November, every November and March, coordinate with the bird migration seasons. Happy to see you, engage with you in Israel at all whatsoever. Jessica, are you with us? Like to say hello and
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica. I am the Director of Marketing and Development at Nature Israel, and I'm based in Austin, Texas right now. Jay, there's a few questions that some audience members have asked. So if you are ready. The first one is, how do you think that Israel's sustainable innovation will help build relationships with neighbors in the Africa, Europe, and the Gulf and the rest of the Levant?
I mean, that's a good question, and the hope is that it will. You know, I'll just say as a quick diversion, Tal Ben Shachar, was an Israeli who taught at Harvard for a long time, positive psychology, talked about the 5 drivers of it. Why is Israel a startup nation? What about Israel made it such an innovative startup nation? He talks about 5 drivers very briefly. They're the whole family scene in Israel. Everybody feels like they're in your business and they're your family. A sense of lifelong learning, not just in the yeshiva world, but ongoing training and adult education is something that Israelis tend to do very much. There's the Israeli chutzpah. It's kind of undefinable, but you know, Israeli chutzpah is one of the drivers. Adversity. We live in a tough country and have had to fend for ourselves and defend ourselves. But the reason I'm bringing this out is that tikkun olam, the urge, the Jewish commandment to fix the world, to repair the world. Nobody has made a startup that doesn't want to fix the world. Nobody just wants to make money. So yeah, these sustainable innovation will help build relationships because these are the things that make life better. Whether it's water technologies and even helping, as I mentioned, subsistence farming in Africa and the global South. With the Gulf states, of course, it's very different. These are countries that are looking for their desert countries being affected by climate change, just like us, and they're looking for Israeli innovation. And there's already with the signing of the Abraham Accords just a year ago, there's already movement in terms of business and environmental deals going on with the UAE and other Abraham countries.
Awesome. The next question is, Somebody said, I'll be part of a social action fellowship in Jerusalem, Israel, starting in September, and I'm going to get the chance to organize an event for my school cohort. You mentioned that you speak at schools. What is the best way to reach out regarding speaking engagements?
You can write me directly at my email is jays@spni.org.il. Write me directly, or you can contact Jessica. She's in Austin. But happy to speak and engage in schools. I do some speaking engagements both here and when I get abroad.
And I'll put your email in the chat as well. The next question is, what role does natural gas play in long-term transition towards renewable energy?
I mean, the question I ask is natural gas acting as a bridge to that transition to renewable energy, or is it acting as an obstacle to it? And I think we don't know. The answer to that is both of those things are happening in Israel and around the globe. Natural gas is a lot cleaner than the oil, the petroleum, and the coal that it replaces, but it's nowhere near as clean as renewable energy. And we're worried that Israel and other countries locking themselves into natural gas infrastructure for decades is something that might not help the transition towards renewable energy. It's a worry.
All right, the next question is, if I come to Israel from an environmental perspective, what's important to see/visit?
Oh, well, so much. First of all, I encourage anybody who's coming to Israel and is on the webinar or knows us at all to contact us, and we'll give you some tips. It depends, of course, on the time of year. But of course, I mentioned the Jerusalem Bird Observatory, the Neely and David Jerusalem Bird Observatory, right next to the Knesset. It's an incredible diamond in the rough, a really small area, which is bird banding. It's a center of community education and volunteering. Same thing with the Gazelle Valley Park in Jerusalem. That's a larger site where we raise gazelles. Gazelles are raised in an internal core where humans don't go, but the gazelles wander freely, and we return them to the wild. Hugely successful and important program. And it was, we fought the city of Jerusalem for over a decade to not give the land over to developers, but to create this incredible urban nature park. But there are other places in Tel Aviv and in the north, happy to enumerate. And you can take a look at our program of, it's on our website for our November trip. Jessica could put that up as well, or how to find it, and give you an idea of the types of things we do on a trip. I see there's a question about sustainable architecture. No, SPNI really doesn't work. We don't have architects on staff. And I mean, for that, I would suggest the Israel Green Building Council is a great organization that we work with, of course. We work on the totality of sustainable cities. There's many aspects of sustainability in a city. Architecture and materials is just one of them, but yeah. For example, urban nature is about getting green spaces and water into cities, which can cool them down. Same thing for kibbutzim in desert areas. And yeah, it's incredibly hot and getting hotter in Beersheba, and not just in Beersheba, but in the Jordan Valley and the northern periphery as well. So, well, is that it? I think, Jessica, are we pretty much done? Any questions in the chat?
Yes, I think that's all the questions.
I did want to mention, though, that just to let you know, I mentioned SPNI is one of Israel's the largest environmental organizations. We have hundreds of environmental professionals, field professionals, scientists, ecologists, but also educators, environmental educators, lobbyists, lawyers, and we're working on all the fronts, all legal means, I like to say, we use to protect the environment. And it's an important job. Very proud to do it, and proud of Israel, proud of SPNI, and also of Nature Israel. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. And I want to thank everybody who participated today, who joined us. I appreciate it very much. Appreciate your support. And if you have the means or inclination, you can sign up for our newsletters, donate, be in touch with us when you come to Israel. And we hope to see you here. We truly hope to see you here. Please be in touch and let us know what you felt about this webinar. And if you have any other questions or thoughts for us, we're happy to engage. So Thank you all very much from Tel Aviv. Have a good evening, everybody.